How are you doing today? My name is Dominic Han, and the focus of my project is going to be on Boko-haram. The main concepts of my project will focus on who is Boko-haram, the historical content of Boko-haram and collective violence, and their relationships to the war theorists Fanon, Tillis, and Hughes. Boko-haram is an extreme Islamic terrorist organization located in Nigeria and has expanded in places such as Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. Led by the ex-FTL member in the Islamic fundamentalist group in the 1990s, Muhammad Yusuf, Boko-haram was developed in 2002 in response to the social and economic inequalities of a corrupt Western Nigerian government. The main ideology, as well as political and religious objective, is to fight against the influence of Western civilization, replacing it with a Sunni Islamic fundamentalist site, although members of Boko-haram did not follow Islamic laws. Boko-haram was led by Muhammad Yusuf, started off as an organization to recruit and educate poor Nigerian youth with the political agenda of starting a new Islamic state. Upon their uprising, Yusuf grew discouraged with Nigerian government as a corporation of Western civilization, warning them that he was going to grow separately from their political corruption and establish a new sovereignty in Burundi. The government ignored the cries of Yusuf even after his stance of taking military action to reclaim national sovereignty. In 2009, confrontation between police officials and Boko-haram members led to a violent clash where 700 were killed. Yusuf was arrested and killed in custody, and the death of the Boko-haram leader led to the organization to take extreme violent conquests to overthrow the Nigerian government and establish their utopian Islamic nation. Boko-haram is now led by Abubakar Shekau. As mentioned before, Boko-haram is against Western civilization. In the name Boko, which is Fulani for book, and Haram, which is Arabic, meaning forbidden, stands for Boko Haram's allegiance to resist Western civilization by being against the Western education that is being incorporated inside Nigerian schools. And after the death of their leader, Muhammad Yusuf, the conquest for the Islamic State for Boko Haram became extremely violent. And a good example of Boko Haram's extreme measures of violence to establish their national state can be traced back in 2014 when they gained national recognition for capturing 274 girls from Kambak. But the question I've always asked when studying this organization is, why do they have to resort to violence in order to claim their eco-religious identity? I found out the answers to these questions when I was able to understand two concepts: the sense of nationalism and decolonization. To understand the eco-religious ideology of Boko-haram, we must trace back as far as the 18th century during the Muslim conquest. Most Nigerians in the north and southeast were traditionally Muslim that followed under the Constitution of Medina, which established Islamic laws. During the colonization of Nigeria in 1903 by the British, there was much indirect rule structured in the north. The British controlled most of the south, where vast amounts of resources were discovered. But the British gave northern Muslim Nigerians much control of the north only if they pledged their allegiance to British colonizers. The colonization thus created separation between northern and southern Nigeria, mainly by religious identity. More, the political representation of North and South Nigeria never really established unification even after they won independence in the 1960s from the British. And because of these separations, Nigeria was broken down into three main ethnic groups: the Fulani, the Yoruba, and the Igbo. And in the beginning of the civilization process and the new independence of Nigeria, it was under the rule of military dictators and Igbo leaders. This caused many religious conflict between the Yoruba and the Fulani, who showed an imbalance in the political leadership. This led to a civil war in 1967, where Nigerians have fought against corrupt leaders and military expansion. Millions died during this war that lasted for 3 years. And after the war, the economy seemed to be stabilized. Southern Nigerians, who had access to all the resources due to the post-colonial era, actually attained a lot of wealth and upheld political positions, while Northern Africans were mainly illiterate and suffered from mass poverty. The Igbo, who were Southern Nigerians and mainly of Christian faith, actually made prosperity in the growing Nigerian government, while the North, mainly the Fulani, who were of Muslim faith, actually suffered and began to start riots upon the corrupt leaders, in which they were feeling like they weren't getting enough educational resources, as well as trying to find social mobility. In analyzing Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, we can clearly see how the process of decolonization is inherently violent. Of course, we see that there's favoritism within the colonial state, which is South Nigeria, from the British. The British actually obtained oil and petroleum, in which made their economy at the time booming. Upon decolonization, the South Nigerians, which are the Igbo tribe of Christian faith, actually gained economic upliftment internationally because of the demand for oil and petroleum, while the North, who had some type of favoritism by the British, had no resources to obtain, thus leaving them into mass poverty and miseducation. Thus, to combat the impoverished native, violence has to be used in order for him to get liberated. Thus, we see that the Fulani Nigerians, which are of Muslim faith, actually rebelling against the predominant Christian Igbo leadership. And Hughes, who actually does correlate with the philosophy of Fanon, actually talks about decolonization and how ethno-religious wars, social and political reforms, and the militarization of separate groups such as Boko-haram will be necessary in order to complete the process of decolonization. There is also talk in Fanon's theory of class conflict and the relationship with capitalism. Because of the clear economic separation between northern Igbo Christian Nigerians and the southern Fulani Muslim Nigerians, we can see that the South typically has more wealth than the North. And because of these class differences, the consequence of decolonization and corrupt government, the actions of the Fulani Muslim group is to inherently use collective violence in order to reclaim their national freedom, independence, and social status. And upon the uprising of Boko-Haram, it's also their ethno-religious ideology in the sense of nationalism. According to Tilly, the Boko-Haram sense of nationalism is very state-centered, instrumental, and of course ideological. Because their objective is to oppose anything that comes from Western civilization, mainly education, also collides with the three fundamental factors of nationalism. The first concept is, of course, national separation. Boko-Haram wants to establish a Islamic state, means that they want to separate from the Western region of Christianity and to establish their original religion, which in pre-colonial time was Islam. The second point, of course, would be abundance of resources. Because the Fulani tribe in northern Nigeria were lack of resources due to colonization, they seem to want to have a demand from their government resources so they can actually have the economic sovereignty they have to build their political sovereignty. And this also leads to the next and final point, which is the consolidation of other national states. With allies on their side, Boko-Haram will be able to establish and get recognized globally by their national status, and which can further heighten their ego and sense of national pride.